Welcome to the Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community, a space where justice meets action and community voices rise. Each episode, we bring you stories from the front lines, changemakers, disruptors, and everyday heroes who are building a more just, equitable, and liberated world. This is more than a podcast. It's a call to listen, learn, and move together. You were just listening to music from the incredibly talented Stephen Cong. You can find him on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today, we have the great pleasure of welcoming him back to this platform where he will be further discussing the nonprofit where he's currently serving. Stephen Cong is a nonprofit professional with 10 plus years of experience in youth, leadership, and workforce development. He currently serves as a senior program manager for Rising Sun Center for Opportunities Climate Careers Bay Area, which creates impact at the nexus of climate resilience and economic equity. Well, hi, Stephen. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited and so grateful to have you back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me back, Denise.
Yeah, no, it's really good to talk with you again. And, I can't wait to hear more about your involvement with community, specifically with your organization. But just starting off, can you please introduce us to Rising Sun? So what work do you do and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who don't know, I, for my day job, am the senior program manager for Climate Careers Bay Area at Rising Sun. So Rising Sun is an organization that has been around for, at this point, over 30 years. And we operate, right, at the intersection of climate resilience and economic equity. So those are two things that before I joined Rising Sun, I never connected the dots on. And after I joined, I'm like, wow, that is actually really cool because they do go together. So Rising Sun has two flagship programs that further that aim. One is Opportunity Build, which is for our adult participants, and the other is Climate Careers, which is what I'm involved with. And so we have two regions for Climate Careers. One is in the Central Valley of California, and the other is in the Bay Area. So as I mentioned, I'm the senior program manager for Climate Careers Bay Area, and we serve all 9 of Bay Area's counties. And this year we are operating in 6 of them in person over the summer. And so we do a lot of great work for the community, and I can't wait to talk about that through this conversation.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear more about that too. And actually, I'm glad that you brought the intersection up as well, because I wanted to talk more about that as well. So, as you mentioned, Rising Sun sits at the intersection of equity, climate, and sustainable careers. So, why do you think that intersection is so important right now?
I think that is very critical, right? Because I think we're living in a very interesting time where so many social justice issues and initiatives are facing blowback from all over the place. Okay. And I think it's important for us in combating the forces that challenge our communities to recognize the ways in which a lot of different issues are actually related. So I spent over 10 years, right, in workforce development and leadership development and all these different things. And I always knew it was people-centered work, but I didn't always know that people-centered work can also be climate-focused. And that's super key, right? Because what we do is we expose people, young people, adults, folks from underserved communities like low-income residents and community members to jobs that they might not have even known existed, to sectors that they might never have been exposed to, that does a lot of very important work, making our climate more resilient, making our communities more green, and make the environment that we live in more sustainable. And doing so requires work, and doing so requires an entire sector of the economy to thrive. And the green economy can't thrive if it's limited to a certain population. And so we want to expand access to the green economy for folks who historically have not had access to high quality, high road jobs. And so for me, that's where the intersection comes in between economic equity and climate resilience.
Right. I really love that. Thank you for sharing that. So, can you tell us more about climate careers? So what is climate careers and how does it empower local youth?
Yeah, absolutely. So Climate Careers is our youth-facing program, and
Okay.
it's a workforce development program in every sense of the word. But what makes it unique is the climate
Mhm.
focus. That is our secret sauce, right?
Okay.
So if you haven't heard of the term workforce development before, what it basically is an effort to not only provide
Mhm.
folks from underserved backgrounds a chance to have a job, but also the opportunity to learn what it means to have the skills you need to thrive in your job. So you look at social enterprises, like Goodwill, like other nonprofits, you're gonna see that they provide a lot of trainings that not everybody who has a job are gonna get, right? On things like your
Mhm.
resume building skills, your interviewing skills, all those different things you need to further your professional growth and your career exploration. And so it becomes more than just a job because it's a job that trains you to be successful at work. And for
Mm.
us, what Climate Careers does is we take that workforce development angle and we
Mhm.
focus on the climate sector, on the clean economy. And so we're not just training people to be successful in any job. We want to give them the skills to succeed in work and show them what work can look like when you're furthering the cause of organizations that support our climate.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And if you're comfortable with this, before we jump into more the details of your organization, I'd love to talk more about like what drew you into this work. So, what first drew you personally into this work? So, for example, was there any particular experience or moment that made you passionate about helping young people and communities thrive? Like, what's your why for doing this
Yeah.
kind of work?
Absolutely, like my why, my entry point, right?
Uh huh.
So one story that I always tell people is, thinking about what I look like as a high school student. I don't know
Mm.
if we always like to look back on our awkward teenage years,
Uh
but for me,
huh.
I do think back to those days, right? One experience that I never forget was when I was applying for colleges. And sometimes with college applications, you also have to do interviews. And so for me, there was this one college interview that I did as a high school student that really stood out to me, that really showed me how little I knew about the interviewing process and what it
Mm.
looks like. Because during this interview, I just remember being all dressed up, I had my little suit and tie on, feeling really
Yeah.
nervous, my hands were clammy, and just being so relieved when the interview was finally done, only for the person who interviewed me, right, to
Yeah.
then give this feedback. He was like, okay, so Stephen, I can tell based on your, resume here that you're definitely very smart. You can probably be
Mhm.
very successful. And I do have to remind myself I'm interviewing a kid. I'm interviewing a high
Mm.
school student. And I need to remind myself that with high school students, I gotta lower my standards. And I was just like so floored because I thought I did a good job with the interview.
Oh,
But clearly there were ways in which I didn't meet his expectations, right? And I was so
yeah.
confused as a high school student because I just kept wondering, like, what did I do wrong? What do I not know about how this is supposed to work? What do I still need to learn? And
Right.
back then, I didn't have any resources or mentors or organizations to support me with getting the skills I needed for something like an interview. And it's why the work that I now do is so meaningful for me, right? Like,
Yeah.
I've been in so many organizations where the focus is on giving young people these
Mhm.
skills that they might not learn in a formal classroom environment in school so that they can walk into an interview knowing what the interviewer is expecting and knowing how they can be successful. And that drew me to the workforce development side, right?
Right.
What about climate? So when Rising Sun asked me about my interest in climate when I first
Mhm.
was interviewed by them, like here's a story. Here's like, let me paint you a picture, right? So
Okay.
at one point, I was living in LA. I know you're based in SoCal. I
Uh-huh.
love LA. I love SoCal. I don't love riding the buses in SoCal, but that's
Right.
part of
No.
it. That is
Yeah,
part
our
of it.
transportation system's not up to par to Bay Area.
Yeah, I'm like, the Olympics are coming in 2028. How does that even happen? Right? So, like, I don't even know. But what I do remember about riding the buses is that I love going to the San Gabriel Valley because the food there is
Okay.
great. I used to live in downtown LA, and I
Mm.
would ride that bus that crossed those viaducts in LA where, this little lake reservoir situation, whatever that was. And I just remember, like, every time I rode the bus, across that body of water, there was no body of water. Like it's
Yeah.
like an aqueduct and it was mostly like empty. And you
Mm.
can tell that it's not meant to be empty. There was supposed to be water there. You can see like on the walls of that, little aqueduct, thing, like where the water is supposed to be because it's a different color. And so it's almost like a daily reminder when I rode the bus of just how our climate has changed, right? Like how little water we have now compared to what we had before, and the threat of us losing even more water over time. And so it's a daily reminder that like climate change is an urgent issue and climate resilience should be an urgent focus. And it's like not something I was able to connect with my passions, my main passions about youth development and workforce development until I joined Climate Careers.
Wow, I really love that. Thank you for sharing that. So, yeah, just going back to the work that you do with your organization, can you please explain what is a greenhouse call?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the greenhouse column, and I should talk more about Climate Careers in general,
Oh,
is
yes, yes. Uh-huh.
the crux of our Climate Careers program, right? So every year we bring on teams of young people between ages 15 to 24 from low income backgrounds, and some of them might have even more barriers than just being low income into our program. And they conduct what we call a greenhouse call. So a greenhouse call is around 90 minutes long, and residents in the Bay Area and Central Valley can sign up for this service. And what ends up happening is three things. Our young people go in teams of 2 into the homes of clients who signed up for our services, and they conduct an energy and water assessment. So they're going to go through your home with your permission to see like, hey, like, do you have any water leaks here? How efficient is your toilet flushing, right? Like, what kind of appliances do you have? Is it gas? Is it electric? And then from there, we can assess what kind of measures or energy and water efficiency devices can we install. And the installation is the second part. So after we do the assessment, we can let you know, hey, we noticed that you have X number of light bulbs that are not the most energy efficient. We have some light bulbs that we can replace with them with, and these are all LED. Would you allow us to replace those, right? We're like, hey, we notice you have like a gas stovetop. Have you heard of induction? Because we have some free induction cooktops that we can give you along with cookware. So we give them free things that lower their energy bills, that make their homes more energy and water efficient, and we install these items as well. And lastly, we do the education piece. We give them a bunch of materials and resources and flyers that just tell them about all the things in their community that they can tap into to further their energy and water resiliency journey, and tips for how to make their energy and water bills lower, right? Like, I did not know that if I turned on my lights at different times in the day, like it means a whole different thing in terms of how much I'm paying, right? Like, I didn't know for the longest time what peak hours were. And once I found out, I'm like, okay, let me not turn on my lights when I don't have to. I could be saving a bunch of money here, So that's what we do. So we, within 90 minutes, do an assessment, install energy and water efficiency devices, and provide education. That's a greenhouse call.
No, that's really cool. And I'm glad that you bring that up too, because I think it's really helpful that you actually walk people through that, because I've received mail a lot and also email from my electric provider and saying like peak times or this and that. And like, it doesn't make sense. But I think if it doesn't make sense to me, I could imagine like it not making sense to a lot of people. But yeah, once you like tell them that if you pay attention to this, you can actually save money. So that's really cool that your organization is bringing awareness to that.
And that's actually a good point that you bring up too, right? Like, I also get those emails, and I don't know about you, but if the email is not from someone I know asking me to do something, it's like delete it. You know what I'm saying? Like, peak hours, I don't know, it's peak hour for me to eat right now, So, you know what I'm saying? So I think that in-person connection does so much more. Make sure the information really gets across that, hey, these are peak hours that save you money. You have all these ways to save money for free just by going through our program. So I really love what the greenhouse calls can offer local residents.
No, I really love that. And I'd love to talk with you more about the youth who are involved in this program too. So can you tell us about the youth involved in this program? So for example, like what are the backgrounds, or, also like being a part of this, what skills or opportunities do they also gain?
Yeah. So we employ young people during what's called like a critical decade, right? So you might have heard that term before. Often used to describe transitional age youth, although our demographic is a little broader. So we serve young people 15 to 24 years old. And that's a very important era in someone's life developmentally. it's around the time, your brain is still forming, you're in a life stage where you're exploring things that can come once you leave school, once you are exploring what it means to live independently, once you're exploring careers and jobs more seriously. And so there's a lot of big life decisions that can be made. And, you oftentimes can be overwhelmed thinking about how do I make those decisions in the best way. So we support young people during this critical decade, and we support young people from low-income backgrounds because, this is a social justice-oriented podcast. So we are all on the same page about the fact that we don't live in a world that's meritocratic, right? Like not everybody starts from the same place. And so some people might live in communities where, through friends, family, networks, they have access to resources for finding jobs, for figuring out what employers are looking for, and having connections that take you into a career that you want. But that's not available to everyone. So we work with young people from backgrounds where they might not know what kind of jobs are out there. They might not know what kind of skills they need to really get the job that they want. And they might not know what it means to be an active participant in the world of work, right? And so we bring them in, these 15 to 24-year-olds, often from low-income backgrounds, to not only learn how to work at Starbucks, but how to work in an industry that they might not have been exposed to before, which is the clean economy.
No, I love that. I'd love to talk with you more about that. So, as you know, I've been involved with AmeriCorps for most of my professional career. And one thing that I really appreciate is like how leadership development connects to like larger community change as well. And we are developing these young people, but at the same time, having that intentionality of recruiting from the communities to serve the communities and help them to grow. So, I would love to hear about this from you, but why is investing in young people such a powerful strategy for creating long-term community change, just in your opinion?
I think that's such a great question, Denise. And I think this is why I've been in youth development for 10 plus years myself as well, right? I alluded to the critical decade earlier, and I think it's because you have to invest in the future, right? It's not to say that adults don't experience the need to pivot careers, or that there's no adults who, need support getting access to high road jobs. I think for young people, you're at a place where, you, during this period of your life where you're 15 to 24-year-old, might just be transitioning from living with family to figuring out your next steps afterwards. You need a lot of support during that time. Your exposure to these things might just be systemically limited, right? School doesn't teach you everything about what you need to know in the workforce. And so, we feel a very critical need there. You're at a place where you haven't built a lot of resources for yourself yet. And you might not have always had the support you needed from, let's say, mentors or therapists or people who can help you in comprehensive ways. And so we are very invested in those wraparound services for young people so they can not only be successful on the job, but also in life, because these things go together. When your life is happy, your job, you excel at work, right? And then when you're feeling down in life, you might not be successful at work. And for young people, they need a lot more of that support in life to be able to be successful in work. And that's why our program also comes with youth development managers who are there checking in with them one-on-one, who provide that training for them on resumes, cover letters, all those things, and who make sure that, if you need a bus pass, we are going to help you find a way to transport yourself somewhere, right? Like, if you need support to mental health, we let you know what's available in-house. And so, we recognize the importance of this decade for young people throughout all parts of their life, and we try to support them how we can so they can make that successful entry into the world of work.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I really love that. And, just going back to what you were talking about, I think the greenhouse calls are such a wonderful resource for the community. So, yeah, can you please just explain how is the program offered at no cost to participants? I think that's, just a wonderful resource that you're offering to people.
Yes, okay, so this is a really good question. And I was mind blown. I'm going to tell you, I was when I first found out for myself, like how this works, because we call it no cost for a reason, right? Like we don't say the word free, we say no cost, because in some ways you already are kind of paying for this, So In California, we have this thing called the Public Purpose Program Surcharge. And what that means, the PPP surcharge, is that when you pay bills, right? If you're a gas customer and you're paying your bills to PG&E or whatever, part of what you're paying goes towards funding state-mandated gas assistance programs for low-income customers. And that includes energy efficiency programs like ours. So part of what you're paying in your monthly PG&E bill already goes towards ratepayer programs like Rising Sun. And that money then funnels into us, who then provide services that give back to you so that you can lower the bills that you're paying monthly for things that include programs like ours. So it's like, instead of a vicious circle, it's the opposite of that, like whatever the opposite of vicious is, right? Like that giving circle, I would say, where, you know, like your utility bills pay for programs that help you lower your utility bills. And so it's no cost because the cost has already been factored in, which is why you can get things like what we offer for free.
No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And who's eligible to participate in a greenhouse call?
Yes. So when it comes to eligibility, we serve anybody who lives in a residential home, right? So that includes single family homes, multifamily homes, duplexes, triplexes. You know, if you don't know what that means, maybe it's time to get into your real estate era, right? But if you live in a home that's residential, you're eligible. What we don't serve are mobile homes or commercial buildings. So those are some of our restrictions. We are open to renters and homeowners. So, you know, sometimes we get people who tell us, oh, I'm only a renter, I don't actually own this place, and they're about to walk away. And we have to, like, you know, throw out our invisible lasso and like bring them back in and be like, that's okay. You know, you don't have to own where you live. It's okay if you rent, because we don't provide like very invasive installations. It's mostly light bulbs, aerators, etc. So even renters can benefit from this, and we have no income requirement. So as long as you live in our service territories, which again for the Bay Area is all 9 Bay Area counties, you are eligible. And the only other caveat I want to bring up is that if you've heard about us before and you've received our services before, you will be eligible again if you have not received a greenhouse call in the past 5 years.
Okay, great. No, thank you for sharing that. And, you know, I'd love to hear more about like language supports that you offer. So what language support is available for residents who do not speak English? And yeah, what languages does your team speak?
Yes. So if English is not your primary language, it's not the language you're most comfortable in, you are able to sign up for our services and receive them in Vietnamese, Mandarin, Cantonese, or Tagalog, along with Spanish. So these are the 5 languages we are able to offer support with, in addition to English, which is amazing because, you know, in the Bay Area, we definitely live in a very diverse community, and not everyone is like speaks English as their primary language. So we want to increase our access to folks with barriers, right? Folks from low-income backgrounds, folks whose primary language might be something other than English. And it truly is a privilege to be able to do so for folks speaking any of these 5 languages.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, I'd love to see if there's any like particular stories that you'd like to share as well. So can you share a story about one resident whose life was positively impacted by a greenhouse call?
Yes, and the story that comes to mind for me is actually about one of our youth.
Okay.
So this youth was in our program last year, and they returned to our program this year as one of our program coordinators. And what I remember is during their training week, I was just asking people, hey, can you think back to when you were in high school, right? What did you look forward to doing for a career? Graduate, or when you leave school? Like, what were some of the options that you were aware of? And this person said, you know, like the only things I knew about when I was in high school was just what my friends did, you know, working with their families, helping out with their uncles, things like that. And that's what I thought I was going to be doing too. Okay. And I think that's a really great thing about climate careers is the exposure component, right? Like, not everybody knows what the green economy means. Not everybody knows what the clean economy looks like. And until you really have some experience in it, you might not know, even if we tried explaining it to you, right? And so we give people real life experience doing the kind of work that they might find most meaningful, that they might most enjoy. and they might not otherwise know about unless there's a program like ours. And so, by participating in climate careers, this person's perspective of what the world of work can include broadens so much, right? Because part of what we do is not just a summer program. It's not just us bringing people into our program every summer doing these greenhouse calls. We also have a fall externship. So for the young people who are in our program, when they are done with the summer, we place them for an additional 4 months with one of our partners in the green economy, where they get to continue to do work that furthers climate resilience, but from another vantage point. So they have multiple angles from which they can understand what the clean economy looks like. And our partners have included research institutions, government offices, nonprofits, etc. Because the clean economy is a big, big place, right? And so that's, I think, the true value add that we bring to a young person's life is that career exposure to a very, very, very important sector.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And, as I mentioned to you before, I think this is a wonderful resource that you're offering to the community. So how can residents sign up for a call? I'm not sure if you might have said this already, but yeah, if you could let people know, especially if there's listeners who are listening into this episode, how can people receive one of these greenhouse calls if they're interested?
Yeah, there's so many ways. I love that. We definitely have an application. There's also QR codes that I could be sharing, but because it's a podcast and your listeners might not be looking at me right now, although they could be, right?
Okay.
And I'm waving hello. But if they're listening on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever, the easiest way that I can share with you right now is by going to our website, which is risingsunopp.org.
Okay.
And then at the top, you're going to want to click on programs. And then from there, click on greenhouse calls. So risingsunopp.org, programs, and then greenhouse calls. And that will take you to a page where you can find a link to sign up today. And from there, you can fill out our application and choose the language that you want to receive service in.
No, that's wonderful. And I know that you talked about this at the beginning of our conversation today, but can you again remind our listeners what areas you serve, though, so that they can know if they live within whatever area that you serve?
Yes, so we serve all 9 Bay Area counties, and then we serve 6 of them in person this year. So the 6 counties that we serve in person this year in the Bay Area are Alameda, Contra Costa, San Francisco, Santa Clara, Napa, and Sonoma.
Okay, wonderful. No, thank you for sharing that. And, you're doing wonderful work, and I'd love people to take advantage of the resources that you have to offer. But I also want to see if there's ways that people can also support your organization as well. So beyond signing up, what are other ways that people can support Rising Sun? For example, through donations, partnerships, hiring program graduate, or even just sharing the program with family and friends. I'd love to leave it open to see if there's ways that people listening can support your organization and your organization and your work.
Yes, absolutely. So when you go to our website, risingsunopp.org, you're going to see a massive donate button on the upper right-hand side. So if you do feel compelled to support us financially, go to our website, top right corner, click that donate button, and that's going to get you started with that. Definitely sign up for a greenhouse call, because as much as we're supporting you, you're also supporting us by taking on this service. We can continue serving not just your home, but the homes of others in the Bay Area who might also want this opportunity. And tell your friends and family about this. When you have a greenhouse call and you're seeing how you're not only making your home more energy and water efficient, making your environment more climate resilient, but also you're supporting the young people who come into your home with expanding their career development, I think you're going to realize that you're making a difference in a lot of really important ways. And it's something that you don't want to gatekeep, right? You want to definitely let your friends and family know about this so they can also benefit from the work that benefits our young people. And so sign up for a greenhouse call, tell your friends. And if you are someone between 15 and 24, or you know someone between 15 to 24, do know that we are recruiting typically between February and May/June of every year. And so next February, if you're in Alameda County, Concord, Santa Clara County, or Santa Rosa, just know that you can still apply when the cycle restarts. This year, we are still looking to hire a couple of folks who have their own car, their own vehicle registration, their own license, and live in either Santa Rosa, Napa, or San Francisco, because we still have a couple of open spots in these communities. So if you live in Santa Rosa, Napa, or San Francisco, and you are between 18 and 24 because you need to be a driver,
Okay.
and you have your own car, registration, and license, please, please, please apply.
No, that's wonderful. And Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about the wonderful work that you and your organization are doing in community. But just as we're wrapping up, if listeners can take away one message from our conversation, what do you hope that would be?
I would hope that people really think about the human aspect of climate and also the climate impact of human-centered work, right? I think a lot of times when we think about, supporting future generations and diversifying our future workforce and providing access to good jobs for young people, we rightfully center the people who are going to benefit from this work. And I think it really serves us to also know that this work can make our environment, our physical environment, more climate resilient, greener, better, right? And so I want people to understand how important and unique the work that Rising Sun does is, right? Because we really are at the intersection of climate resilience and economic equity. We bring young people into good jobs within a sector that's going to benefit their environment and their communities. And by bringing them into these sectors, we're expanding the access that this sector has for different people. And we're diversifying the sector and strengthening it in the future. So it's like a feedback loop of benefits for both the climate and the workforce.
No, I really love that. So, thank you again, Stephen, for your time. But, I just love to leave this open for you. If there's anything else that you wanted to bring up, maybe any stories or any impacts that you've witnessed. Anything else that you'd like to leave for our listeners before we wrap up today?
I would just say this, it's really great work. And every year we have young people who are looking to come back to climate careers. And I think that really speaks to the value of our program. And more importantly, the value that they are, in fact, finding in the green economy. And that's what we want to see, right? A more diverse future workforce, specifically in this economy that's doing so much to make our climate more resilient.
No, I really love that. And thank you again for your time today. But just as wrapping up, I know that you mentioned this just a little earlier, but wanted to leave it as a reminder for people. But lastly, how can people find you if they like to connect with you and get involved with their organization? So as you were saying, the website would be one way. Is there a way that they could connect on social media as well? Or what would be the best way for them to connect with their organization?
Yes, so definitely you can find us on our website, risingsunopp.org, risingsunopp.org. And it's the same for our Instagram handle, which is also at risingsunopp.
Okay, wonderful. You're doing such beautiful and amazing work into community. And, I really do wish you all the best moving forward. But thank you again for your time. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thanks so much for having me, Denise.
Okay, thank you. Talk to you again soon. Thank you for being here and tuning in to Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community. Your presence in this movement matters. If today's conversation moved you, share it, talk about it, and keep the work going. Together, we're not just imagining change, we're making it. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay in the fight.
Every time I feel so mad and sad and bad, I say to myself, relax, lean back, it's a brand new day. And every time I feel so down that a frown is all